This episode of the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast is powered by COFRESH, the UK's #1 Indian snack brand. For friends of the podcast, COFRESH brings bold flavour to every moment. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that we've got some COFRESH snacks in the studio that we'll be cracking open later. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. England scored 304 in the T20I on Friday night, the highest ever score in a T20 game between two full member nations. Somerset are winners of the Blast for the second time in 3 years. Leicestershire are promoted for the first time ever. We're set for an epic final couple of weeks in Division 1, and Matthew Hayden has perhaps changed the dynamic of what England fans want to see happen this winter. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today are the Wisden editor and Daily Mail journalist Lawrence Booth and Katya Witney. But first, let's head to Mark Butcher. Butch, Friday night was extremely fun. England scored 304. It's the first time a full member side has scored 300 against another full member side, and almost the most remarkable thing about it was it wasn't even remotely a surprise for the back end of that innings. England started so well that 300 felt about par at the end of the power play, after which England were 100 without loss.
Extraordinary. I was travelling to Edgbaston for finals day and sort of clicked onto the on the app on my phone and saw that we were 80 something off 4.4 overs, and was like, oh my goodness. But you always expect, as you sort of keep catching up with it along the way, you always expect that at some point there's going to be a drop off and things will return to normal. But I watched the last sort of 3 or 4 overs and stuff. Saw Salt get to his 100 live. Unfortunately missed live watching the Butler pyrotechnics, but have since watched them back. I mean, jeepers creepers. It was just absolutely astonishing hitting. Astonishing. And kind of, entirely in line with what we know that the England batters are capable of, given sort of a nice flattish pitch and no matter what type of bowling attack, I suppose it's just frightening. That is absolutely extraordinary.
A good mantra that I heard recently that I really like is that a lot of the times in cricket you talk about who should be effectively a team's 9th, 10th and 11th best player, but actually most of the time it's how well your best 2 or 3 go. And seeing Jos Buttler bat like he is currently batting is such a good sign for England, because it wasn't a guarantee, right? We saw how difficultly he wore the captaincy at times, and given the options available to him, it wasn't a guarantee, given his age, that he'd necessarily come back into the ranks. And he's come back into the ranks, and he's playing the best cricket he's played for England for actually quite a long time.
Yeah, and I suppose to all those who don't believe he should bat anywhere else other than open in T20 cricket, that it's a perfect example as to why. And the other thing, I suppose, is that even though Phil Salt ended up with 140, it was Jos's magnificence at the beginning that kind of set his ball rolling a little bit. It's also one in the eye for detractors of Phil Salt that say that he struggles against the better bowling attacks. That was a South African attack. Okay, Rabada hasn't played for a little while, and every team always has its excuses, including England, in terms of what sort of stage players are in at various parts of tours. But even so, it's just absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
You watch domestic T20 cricket as much as anyone. I find Phil Salt's recent ascent really interesting, because he wasn't necessarily a standout player in his early 20s, even mid-20s, right? His record in the Blast and the 100 was good. It was fine. It wasn't spectacular. And there was so much competition for spots in the England top order that it wasn't a given that Salt would play that much for England. Yet in the last year and a half, he's turned himself into one of the best white ball openers going. He's got 4 T20I 100s now. Only 8 have been scored by English men. He's won the IPL 2 years in a row, striking 170. He's become a serious T20 player.
He has, yeah. I mean, I remember speaking to him in the Caribbean. Crikey, I can't remember how long ago that was now. England had that white ball series in the West Indies. Um, I remember speaking to him at the beginning of that and thinking to myself that here's somebody that's got an incredibly good attitude to sort of who he is at the moment and what he wants to be and the role that he wants to play as an England player. I remember him doing some work with a certain AR butcher a little while back while he was still at Sussex, on trying to um, improve his range, really, to be a little bit less dependent on having to hit everything through the leg side. And I think that's been clear for everybody to see for the last 18 months that his offside play has improved wildly. Um, and yeah, he just has a really, really good attitude to going out there and being somebody that is gonna fail from time to time, because if you're playing at that sort of high risk, high tempo, that is, of course, is built into what you do. But I don't think he lets it sort of get to him or get him down, or makes him change particularly his outlook, to what his job is in the T20 side. So that's what makes him so dangerous. And when he's on, he's unbelievably good.
And on his offside game, is that something you've noticed improve over the last 2 years?
Massively, yeah. But in the early days, that everything had to go through the leg side. No matter what line it was on, his go-to route to power and to the boundary was through the leg side. But now he's just as happy slapping it through extra cover, over point, over third man, over mid off, as he is smashing it over mid wicket. And of course, you open up the other 180 degrees of the ground, and you make yourself even more difficult to bowl at than he was before. So yeah, absolutely, that's been the case.
And more generally, what have you made of McCullum and Brooks' first home summer in charge? It's been quite a bitty white ball summer. The series haven't had much build up at all. There's been quite a lot of rain as well. But in terms of what they've done in the T20 stuff in particular, and that's the format which has a World Cup closest, they've won the 4 games that have actually been T20s. The one game they didn't win was that weird washout at Cardiff.
Yeah, the 5-over game at Cardiff. Well, I think you're seeing what you should expect to see from a team that has the resources in terms of talent to pick from. Is that they're a bloody dangerous team. They're very, very dangerous side. Prior to the ODI, the first ODI at Headingley, the team only got together like the day before the game, which is not ideal. I saw the interview with McCullum while they were waiting in vain to get on at Nottingham last night, and he sort of mentioned that. He said it wasn't an excuse. He just said it's very unusual and not particularly helpful to only have less than 24 hours before you play your first game. But yeah, what's not to like? I think again there are a lot of interesting questions that come up around where the best way to line these guys up now. And Duckett as an opener, Will Jacks as an opener. What's not to like? There's lots and lots of players. Everybody wants to bat at the top of the order, but perhaps you go back to the idea that sort of Joss is the best of the best, and so therefore maybe it should be him. Does that mean that somebody like Ben Duckett might be the best suited to sort of play a slightly different role himself, and maybe come in at 4 or whatever, and be there to drive, I should say, sweep the spinners to distraction? Who knows? The thing that Brook and McCullum, the problem that they have is trying to work out the best way to use all of the wonderful resources that they've got. At least they don't have the issue around, we don't really have the resources. We're looking to plug gaps with players who don't have the ability really to kind of affect games in a positive way.
If you were involved in that decision, what would your starting point be with someone like Jos Buttler? Because the two ways of thinking about Jos Buttler historically have been, do you put him in the position where there is the least strength, or do you put him in a position that influences the game most because he can do everything?
Yeah, but I think both arguments are valid, honestly. Well, one thing I would say is that at the beginning of Jos's career, and when he was sort of coming to prominence and becoming an England player, the role that he played, it would have been for Somerset, was as a finisher, a sort of cold-blooded, cold-eyed finisher, and he was unbelievably good at it. I'm not entirely sure that he has that same sort of mindset, or is as good at that anymore as he was then. He's become a different animal since those days, and so therefore, you know, perhaps him being up at the top is the best place for him, and we have to try and find somebody else to fulfill that role, get more out of Harry Brook. As I said, is Ben Duckett somebody that has the malleability in terms of the way that he plays to be more effective in the middle? I don't know. It's a really difficult one. I mean, because I'll hold my hands up. I've kind of said, well, particularly in 50, with that game being so long, 5 overs to go is much better than him being gone within the power play. So I'd much rather have him coming in the middle to try and influence a game. In T20s, I think I guess it rings true, doesn't it? You want your best players to have the opportunity to face the most balls. So I think maybe that case is closed after last week.
We had an email in from Sam who says, "Hello, could we please pull Mark Butcher up on his slanderous hit into the sewage canal comment during his finals day commentary? The city of Birmingham was built around the River Ree. After putting his leg, please let him know that we love his commentary and are big fans of the pod. Sam and Lydia, two proud Brummies who live on the sewage canal."
I know we did correct that. It was the first image that flashed into my head. You kind of, when you're commentating live, sometimes imagery and things come out that perhaps you don't quite mean. And the image that I had was of, particularly when there's a lot of rain around, the kind of, it looks like there's sort of sluices going into this sort of, into the gap. There's a little bridge that you wander over from the nursery ground to the thing, and it looked a bit, but it's not a sewage canal. The stuff around, being able to hit the ball into Worcester, some people are absolutely adamant that the county line has changed, and that was absolutely that one. I don't know, and if that's wrong, I hold my hands up. But again, there was no offence meant to proud Brummies everywhere.
In general, though, finals day delivered again 3 really good games, and probably the best side in the end, winning it in Somerset.
Yeah, they've probably been the best side they've been at the last 5. They've probably been in the best 2 or 3 for all of that time anyway. Despite the fact that they only won it the once in 2023 to go along with what was it, 2005? Now we have to go back to. So yeah, fantastic side, brilliantly led. Lewis Gregory is a top captain, and they have a lot of players. Much in the way we were just talking about England, they have a lot of players that can sort of influence and win matches on their own. I thought it was a brilliant finals day, actually, one of the best ones that I can remember, and that's not just recency bias. I think the pitch was great. The only time perhaps that the pitch had any real say would have been at first thing, the early start for the first game, where it just did a little bit. But for the rest of it, it was perfectly fair. The crowd got what they wanted, seeing the ball flying out the park. We had tense, close games. We had the first ever 100 on finals day from Chris Lynn, who ruined what looked like was going to be a really great semi-final, but completely ruined it by hitting 30 off and over. Some of the most brutal Oz-on-Oz violence that you're ever likely to see. And the final was an absolute cracker as well. I think it was a great success. Hats off to Gary and his team at Birmingham. Hats off to the fans too, because I can remember a lot of the finals days that I've done, there being sort of big gaps in the ground where the teams who'd been knocked out, where their fans had left, and so you kind of got the feeling that yes, this is the final of a God knows how many month-long competition, but it doesn't have a full house to appreciate it. That really wasn't the case on Saturday. Most people stuck around, and it was terrific. I mean, I still think the whole thing is slightly bizarre, but we'd had the stat was that the last 6 finals have been won by the team that won the second semi-final, and we were talking prior to the final beginning, and Nighty asked me, he said, do you think that's going to continue? And I said, well, this is slightly different this time. They've only had half an hour between the second semi-final finishing and the final starting. And I said that, I'm not sure that that's the same as the sort of the usual. I think we'd normally go off air for 45 minutes or whatever. And I felt as though perhaps for Hampshire, a couple of Chris Wood got a bit of cramp. Chris Lynn had gone in the calf. They didn't have time to get off the field, have a bit of a rub down, and properly sort of get themselves. I mean, if you can ever properly get yourself ready to go on the trot. But other than that, I thought it was a brilliant day. I still think there's a better way of doing it, but it was a brilliant day.
Yeah, it very much delivered. Yeah, again, let's leave it there for this week. England off in Ireland. This week starts on Wednesday. Lawrence, what have you made of England's white ball summer? Obviously, the first one in which McCullum and Brooke were in charge. Some headline moments, scoring 400 twice, scoring 300 in a T20 game as well, but also the dramatic defeat in the first ODI against South Africa. What have you made of it?
It's 8 wins, 3 defeats. One of those defeats was the farce in Cardiff last week. Another one was when they came straight off the 100 into an ODI and didn't seem to know what day it was. So, people say, well, they should have beaten West Indies 6-0. They should have beaten West Indies, but to win 6-0 was pretty good, I thought. West Indies aren't a bad, especially T20 outfit, so that was a good start. And then they just seemed to be getting into their stride against South Africa when, rain ruined the third T20. I think the highs are going to be very high under McCullum and Brooke. We've seen that already. You mentioned 300, there's been a couple of 400s. They still retain the capacity, a bit like the Test team, to fall in a heap. But of course, they will say that scheduling was partly to do with that in the first ODI. So a good start, and Buttler and Salt have reasserted themselves as a world-class opening T20 pairing. There's a World Cup coming up. So things are falling into place, I would say.
Katya, essential to the fun on Friday was Phil Salt, 141. He's now scored half of England's men's T20I 100. He wasn't actually guaranteed a spot in the side, given that he missed that West Indies series. Jamie Smith and Ben Duckett were in the side, but then missed this series because they've been rested. A really good reminder that he's an amazing T20 opener.
Yeah, no, and I hold my hands up that I said when the squads were announced on this podcast that I didn't think Phil Salt should be opening for this series. I wanted Jamie Smith to come in. But yeah, that century on, when was it now? Like at the Friday? That was an absolutely insane kind of a knock that you cannot ignore. So Phil Salt, I think some of the stuff around why people wouldn't have noticed so much if he slipped out of the side, or why his place in the side wasn't necessarily secure going into this summer, is that the runs he's scored have been scored so much in the Caribbean and in T20 leagues rather than in front of English fans on home soil. So a quirk of the post-COVID schedule means that Salt's played more T20Is in Bridgetown than he has in England in his career so far. But in 45 T20Is, he's now got 400. So he scores 100 in a T20I on average every 11 innings, which is utterly ridiculous. He's the only man who's scored more than one T20I 100 for England. So if you look at someone like Jos Buttler, England's greatest ever white ball batter, who's going to be remembered as one of the greats of the white ball game, he's only passed 100 once in an England T20 shirt, whereas Phil Salt's done it 4 times, which feels a bit of a kind of odd contrast. And I remember something you said on the Daily Pod after that game in Manchester was that when Phil Salt first came into England's white ball setup, you didn't quite get it. And I think it kind of feels like England have so many amazing T20I or white ball openers that it didn't feel like Phil Salt did anything particularly different to the rest of them. Like if you think back to the 2022 T20 World Cup, when Salt was edged out by Alex Hales to come back into the side, everyone knew Alex Hales as this T20I world beater, part of England's dominant period in ODIs through the kind of pre-2019 period. And it didn't feel like Salt did anything to kind of usurp that. But if you look at the development he's had over the kind of last 2.5 years or so, the runs he's scored have come so quickly and so rapidly. He's accumulated this massive T20 runs behind him. So since the beginning of 2024, only 4 people in the world have scored more T20 runs than Salt, and that's built off an incredible run of performance in the IPL for KKR and then for RCB. And it's very hard to argue he's not now like one of the dominant forces in T20 batting worldwide when you actually look at the stats and look at what he does. And crucially now, he's more than just a power play biffer that he came in as the start. When you look at that innings in Manchester, there are very few people who can just carry on through the innings and make that score, that 300, that doesn't tail off and become like a 250 or a 260 or something like that. But yeah, and he's now inked himself in T20 eyes until the World Cup. So job done.
Yeah, it's amazing that he's, you're right to say that out of all the young-ish white ball openers, he wasn't necessarily predestined to be a world beater. In his mid-20s, he was averaging in the mid-20s in the Blast. He wasn't someone who was dominating English domestic cricket, but in the last 2 years, it's not just the runs he scored in the IPL. He's won the last 2 IPLs, by the way, with different teams. His strike rate is up at 175 across 2 seasons in the IPL. So he's done really well recently. I think broadly on the white ball summer, I think it's really clear that they have an identity, and sometimes you can smile and laugh at some of the pronouncements they make about wanting to go harder, but they have actually, to be fair to them, given themselves a team construction that allows them to go pretty hard, with Tom Banton at 6, Will Jacks at 7. I thought Sam Curran's return was quite interesting because he's not been involved in any Brendan McCullum squad since McCullum took over as Test coach initially 3.5 years ago and then white ball coach early this year. But I think the one thing that was missing in this England team was a bit of depth in both batting and bowling, and particularly bowling, with Jacks and Bethell being the 5th bowler. Curran coming into the side means that the 5th bowler is bolstered a little bit and having another option there. And I thought it was quite interesting looking at that 2022 T20 World Cup win. Actually, England's depth was extraordinary. They had 8 bowlers in the team. Stokes, Curran, Wokes, Jordan, Rashid, Moeen and Livingston. And Curran was batting at 8, Chris Jordan at 10 with Chris Wokes at 9. I think if Curran does even okay for a bit, he's going to be very hard to leave out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with Curran, England famously winning the 2010 World Cup in the Caribbean. They brought Ryan Sidebottom in quite late because they'd studied the IPL data and they said you need a left armer. That was a kind of one of those T20 pieces of pearls of wisdom that, looking back, seems dead obvious. But actually, in the meantime, England have tried various left armers. Willie, hasn't played since the last 50 over World Cup. Topley, poor guy, keeps getting injured. He's a damn good bowler. Now, Curran, I think they're thinking, look, we do need some variety. His slower ball has gone viral. Was it 43 miles an hour at its slowest? Clearly, on the tracks in India and Sri Lanka next year, the World Cup, that could be interesting. And as you say, they were stung here by the ODI where Jackson Bethell went for 112 between them in 10 overs. That kind of cost them the series, really. They lost by 5-6 runs that game. So yeah, Curran does offer a bit of everything, and it'll be interesting to see how his relationship with McCullum goes, because it's been set up as he's not played under Brendan McCullum until now. So that's going to be one of the fascinating subplots, I think, in the months ahead.
Why haven't they paid Rehan Ahmed?
They think he's 21. They don't think he's 21. He is 21. They think he's young, and leg spinners come into their own in their late 20s, which is fine. But they're picking Shoaib Bashir at the age of 20. He's 9 months older than Rehan Ahmed in the Test team. Now, they would say that's a different thing. My argument with Rehan Ahmed, I wrote about this the other week, is that he offers the things that Bashir offers with the ball, possibly more, because he can turn it both ways. I know that Bashir's been working on a carom ball. But he also offers batting and fielding, and he's got a bit of swagger about him. Bashir still seems a bit like a kid, kind of in awe of the grown-ups around him. He's done really well, despite the criticism he's faced. Ahmed has got that Bazball strut. He came into Test cricket at 18, took 5 wickets at Karachi. Every time he's bowled for England, he's done well. He was wrongly not used after lunch or tea in Rawalpindi. Stokes seemed to have an off day, an off match that match, and Ahmed was the victim. They should have played him against West Indies. That was an absolutely gilt-edged opportunity to have a look at him. We didn't learn anything new about Adil Rashid. Rashid is 36, 37. They've got to get Rehan Ahmed into the team. 500s for Leicestershire as well, so his batting has been sorted. He will probably go to the Ashes. I mean, I know McCullum has said that we're not sure yet who the second spinner is. He is front of the queue, and he'll definitely go to the World Cup. So he's exciting, but they're worried they don't want to rush him. He's got plenty of time left. I'd always say, Bashir, 21.
Well, I guess with Ahmed, I'd almost spin it the other way around, that it's actually a sign that England are taking the T20 World Cup very seriously, in that they don't think at the moment Ahmed's in their best 11. And Ahmed's had, in a way, a sort of young Sam Curran summer in which it's been really exciting, but it's almost made it more confusing because he's emerged and developed so much as a batter, so much so. You mentioned the 5 Championship hundreds. For me, the fact he was batting 3 in an Andy Flower T20 side, I think says more about how highly regarded he is as a batter at the moment. And his leg spin, I think, has come on, but England don't view him as in their top 2 white ball spinners, and they don't see him in their top 7 batters. So at the moment, there's not a space, which I think, to be honest, I sort of respect that England are taking it as seriously as they are. Katya, should the first game have happened, Harry Brook called the whole evening a shambles. We had a 9 over game on initially, and then England had 5 overs to chase 69, which is quite a lot. And England, assessing conditions, thought we're not risking Jofra Archer, but we're risking the other 11.
I also felt a bit sorry for Luke Wood because he came in for Archer. It's fine if he breaks his knee and spends a couple of months on the sidelines, but not so much for Jofra Archer. As harsh as that sounds, I kind of guess that makes sense in the context of Archer's next few months, the last 4 years for him, but it does feel slightly disingenuous if you're not going to play your fast bowler despite having wanted to play him 24 hours before, and the only thing that's changed is it's quite slippery.
Very slippery.
Very slippery. There was on Sky when Owen Morgan was running his hands over the grass, you could see the droplets like bouncing up as he ran his hand over, and that was about 15 minutes before the start of play. If you're going to play international cricket in September, you're going to have to accept that you're going to play in some unideal conditions. And we've sat here on this podcast a million times and talked about how cricket shoots itself in the foot by not playing when conditions are fine to play. They're just not perfect. The issue is how far below perfect those conditions were in Cardiff. And it felt like there was such desperation to get a game on for punters and for TV broadcasting that they almost kind of sacrificed a bit of the integrity of it. And these T20 series at the end of the summer, when players are rested or missing, can already feel like you've downgraded the spectacle a bit of international cricket, and bilateral T20 series we've talked about have little meaning anyway. This series did have a meaning with the T20 World Cup coming up and most players were available. But when you're watching players slip and slide on the field and coming on and coming off, at one point they were playing in the pouring rain and everyone seemed to be ignoring the fact it was utterly pouring down with rain.
At the end of the South Africa
At the end of the South Africa innings. And having a 5 over thrash for England to come out and try and whack it, it just felt a little bit like this is not international cricket. This is just having a game for a game's sake. And then when you've got the game rained off in Nottingham as well, it kind of just begs the question of what was the point in that. The whole series just felt a bit like a kind of helter-skelter of let's get this done before the rain comes. But I'm not entirely... I can see why that match did go ahead. I'm not entirely sure it should have gone ahead in the way that it did.
England have another series starting in 2 days' time. They are off to Ireland for some are describing as the Stag Do Tour. 3 T20s that start on Wednesday. Ireland are without the injured trio of Josh Little, Mark Adair and Fionn Hand. Katya, Scott Curry has his first England call-up. He's played for Scotland before. He's in the squad for Saqib Mahmood. Who is he? Why he's been picked? And how does it work that he played for Scotland and now plays for England?
Yeah, I mean, gutting for Saqib Mahmood to have an injury after asserting himself in England's best white ball 11s across the last year. But messaging is that it's a minor surgery that he's having on his knee. So hopefully that's not too much. I didn't realise quite how good Scott Curry's been in English white ball cricket over the last 4 years. So in English white ball domestic competitions since 2020, only Tamal Mills and Jake Ball have taken more wickets at a lower average than Curry has. So he came in for Hampshire in 2020. He's got a Scottish dad, I believe, and an English mum, was born in Dorset. I don't want to speak for Scott Curry, but I feel like he's potentially more aligned with England than he is Scotland. But he did make his T20 debut for Scotland, played a few T20s for Scotland last year in March. And he gave Cricinfo some quotes yesterday that he didn't want to keep turning down opportunities that he was being given to play international cricket in the hope that an England cap might one day come along. From the messaging of that, it feels like given Scotland didn't qualify for the T20 World Cup, his opportunities to play top level international cricket were going to be more forthcoming with England than they were Scotland. It's not hard to see why England like him. He's 6'5". He's been part of a really good bowling group at Hampshire, second leading wicket taker in the T20 Blast this year. Very good at the death, which is something England have been looking for as well. in their T20 side. In terms of why he's allowed to play for England, the rules are the waiting period that you have to wait between playing for one country at under 19 level and above and playing for the next doesn't apply to associates. So because Scotland are an associate member, so Curry played for England under 19s in the World Cup that had Bethel and Mousley and that lot a few years ago. He was able to then play for Scotland without a waiting period because that waiting period doesn't apply when you're switching from full member to associate. And hence he's now allowed to play for England without any waiting period because Scotland is an associate and you can transfer for England. It's the same reason why Joe Burns can play for Italy and still play for Australia if necessary and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's not hard to see why England find him so appealing.
Yeah, his record in the Blast is amazing over the last 2 seasons. 47 wickets at 29, only Riley Meredith and David Payne have more wickets on left-handers, left-armers, by the way. David Payne's recent record is ridiculous. He's taken 50 wickets at 15 at an economy rate of 6.5. I know he gets a lot of gigs overseas now, BBL, ILT20, but I think he's genuinely really unlucky not to be in the setup at the moment.
It's interesting. I went to the little tour of the Netherlands in 2022, the one where Morgan sort of quit halfway through the series. And Payne,
another stag do.
Another
tour.
stag. Oh, well, I can't comment what goes on tour, etc. But Payne played in that series, and I thought, well, keep an eye on this guy. He's got great variations, hasn't he, in pace? But England just seem to have sacked him off, basically. I don't see him playing for them again, but that's been to Gloucestershire's benefit.
Yeah, just a bit more on Curry. He's played 2 full seasons back-to-back for Manchester in the 100. And what you said, I think, is really important, is that he bowls overs that most bowlers don't like bowling. So his economy rate at the death in the last 2 years is just under 9. I know he didn't go his way on finals day, but 8.98 runs per over at the death is really good. Very, very few bowlers in the world are under 8.5s. Bumrah, by the way, 6.24 runs and over in the last 2 years at the death.
Curry, he's also 24. He's played in 40 20 Blast Finals days, which is pretty insane because he had a loan period at Leicestershire and when they reached finals day and for Hampshire as well, which is insane.
Yeah. Who needs the IPL? Are we allowed to say that?
We are very much allowed to say
We can start the campaign now.
Yeah.
You're popular in India, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so.
Bit of chat from Australia. So the Ashes preview content rumbles on. How's this from Matthew Hayden this week on the All Over Bar the Cricket podcast? In a discussion about Joe Root and how he might get on this winter, someone was suggesting, I think they were suggesting that if you had a combined 11, Joe Root wouldn't get in it. Hayden says, I'll walk nude around the MCG if Joe Root doesn't make 100 this summer, which to me sounded like a threat to Joe Root. And I wondered, does this change what England fans want from Joe Root? Do they want him to score 10 99s in a row? So they see Haydos do his thing around the MCG. He does like the word nude, doesn't he? Because he famously described Ollie Robinson's bowling 2 years ago as 120k nude nuts, which I think is the first time I've ever heard a sports person described as such.
I remember we were trying to work out what if we quote him in the almanac, do we need to kind of explain what it means? I was like, I think I know what he means. He's saying he's not a very good bowler. Yeah. I was like, yeah, but how? It did raise an issue at an editorial meeting. So he keeps us busy, does Haydos?
He does, yeah.
I'd like to find a cartoonist who, if Joe Root does score 100, can do a cartoon of Matthew Hayden doing that, but with 2 surfboards as pads on his front legs.
And a cowboy hat.
Exactly.
Got to keep that
cowboy hat as well. On the Ashes, by the way, Lawrence, Brendan McCullum spoke to Sky Sports yesterday for about 25 minutes. One of the things he said is that the selection meeting is imminent, so he might have a squad in the next week or so. 2, he said the selection calls are fairly straightforward, and the only thing really up for debate at the moment is the identity of the second spinner. But when it came to 11, though, I thought this was quite interesting because it felt like a repeat of what happened at the end of the New Zealand series last year, where he was given the opportunity to say Ollie Pope, who captained England in their last Test match, would bat 3. He didn't take it. He was also asked about the vice captaincy and said there may well be discussions about Harry Brook becoming vice captain. Again, Pope literally captained England in their last Test match. How do you see it?
That Bethel-Pope debate has been going on. As you say, it started at New Zealand. We were on the outfield at Hamilton after they'd lost by 400 runs, but won the series. And usually McCullum is full of praise for the 11 that's just played, and he will not hear a word against them. But when we said to him, what does Bethel's performance on this tour do for the batting line? He said it gives us a good headache. And then between then and the start of the English summer, the feeling was very much that Bethel was arguably the man in possession, even though Pope batted at 6 because Jamie Smith was on paternity leave, which kind of muddied the waters a bit. Pope did well at 6, by the way, which further muddied the waters. Then, of course, we had the situation where Bethell stayed at the IPL because that was the agreement between the two boards. It wasn't Bethell's choice, by the way. A lot of people going, well, he blew it. He decided to stay at the IPL. No, he was a victim of cricketing geopolitics. He had to stay. What happened next was entirely predictable. Pope scored 171 against Zimbabwe, couldn't then be dropped, then gets 100 in the first innings, Headingley against India. Then did what he always does, fell away and averaged 35 for the series.
So do you think if Pope hadn't scored that 100 against Zimbabwe, that it would have been Bethell first test against India?
Yeah, quite possibly. I think they just they could not drop Pope after that. Vice-captain scores 171, done everything they've wanted him to do. He's kept wicket in an emergency, he's scored runs at 6. He's a utility man, he's a team man. So no, and Stokes, in fact, having got into a tangle about the Pope-Bethell thing before the Trent Bridge test, then went out of his way to big up Pope after it. So they got themselves into an issue. And then, of course, equally predictably, Bethell comes back in at the Oval when he's barely played any cricket and looks terrible. I wrote a piece the other day in the Mail saying that the 100 Bethell scored in Southampton in the one-day series confirmed, I should have said in my opinion, because people were jumping up, and it doesn't confirm, it's all right, it's an opinion piece, confirms that he should start in the Ashes. And I think England have been looking for an excuse, they've been waiting for that moment where they could say, yeah, he's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's get him in. But some people in England who didn't stay up all night to watch the New Zealand series, understandably, just saw that performance at the Oval and thought, this guy's useless. They needed 40 runs with 6 wickets left. He's charging, he's edging onto his stumps. He can't handle the pressure. He's a very good player, Bethell.
Yeah.
I know that 100 at Southampton was his first professional 100, and that's taken a while. Who would Australia less like to bowl to? My feeling is Bethell. I think he could take them apart in a way Pope won't. I think we know what we're going to get from Pope. An average of 30 max.
And 100 at Perth, though, if his fast few series really
We'll
go
take
right.
that, look, and then drop him. Leave him out because we know what's happening. Get that 100 out of the way. So it's presented them with an issue that there's been some talk all summer that Bethell will start the Ashes anyway, regardless of what's going on with Pope against India. And I do wonder if that 100, the one-day 100 against South Africa has just tilted the balance. And as you mentioned, the vice-captaincy, mentioning Brooke as a potential vice-captain is kind of a very relevant tangent to all of that the two problems solved in one go.
A lot of people, I think, are really key. It's very similar to the Salt thing. A lot of Bethell's good stuff's happened when knowing the fans have really been watching. The other thing, just from the outside, I've heard a lot of people say, well, this is a media storm, the media creating this conversation. It's the other way around. I honestly don't think we'd be talking about it this much if England, literally at one point outside of that India series, said, Pope's our guy. They've had several opportunities to be really clear, but they continually are not clear when they are very clear about other positions side. For example, Shoaib Bashir yesterday was 100% backed as England's first choice spinner for the series. They didn't do that for Ollie Pope, so I think therefore the conversation rumbles on.
They don't want to upset Pope. I mean, Stokes got into the muddle at Trent Bridge where he was asked whether Bethell was the incumbent. Now, the question was posed as if we were asking about the 11. Stokes later said he was talking about the squad. Fair enough. He thought the media misrepresented that. Not at all. Everyone came out of that room saying Bethell's the number 3 for the Test team. But it's part of their ethos is you protect the guys within, and that's fair enough. That Pope has done a lot for them, and don't forget he still averages, I think, 41 at number 3 in the Bazball era with a great strike rate. I know people say take out his double 100 against Ireland and runs against Zimbabwe. Well, fine, but it's still a decent average. It's the problem is against India and Australia. He's let them down, and we know what's coming next.
I feel sorry for Pope on one level in that he has done a lot of really good work for England, and there is noise that doesn't have to exist around his place in the side. Even if internally they think Bethell's our guy, they don't have to be as unclear publicly now. I don't think that would create a storm if they said Ollie Pope's our number 3 and vice-captain at the moment, and maybe things change in the future, but that's where we are now. Anyway, moving on. A message from our friends at Dineticq. They're taking elite biomechanics out of the lab and into the nets. Paceflow gives bowlers and coaches clear, camera-based insights built on 2 decades of Loughborough research and already used across counties, academies and other professional setups. This week, they're inviting the cricket community to join them. Try Pace Flow at your club or become a part owner as they scale up. To learn more or back them, head to their website or their crowdfunding campaign, search Dineticq Crowdcube or hit the link in the description. Investing involves risk. Don't invest unless you're prepared to lose all the money you invest. This is a high-risk investment and you are unlikely to be protected if something goes wrong. Take 2 minutes to learn more with the second link in the description. Somerset are winners of the T20 Blast. They beat Hampshire in the final, chasing down 195. Will Smead top scored with 95 before Lewis Gregory blasted 18 off 5 at the very end to get it done with an over left spare. It's their second win in 3 years, Lawrence. Why are Somerset so good? And it's across formats as well. Would you look at them in the Championship? They're the team that's been in Division 1 for the longest. And I know they're talked about as a big major force in county cricket, and they should be, but it almost talked as if they're a major test venue with a 100 team, given their success over recent years.
Yeah, it's heartening, isn't it, that a non-test team can do these things. I mean, Taunton is feels like it's set up for T20, and it's a flat pitch, it's small boundaries. They always get good crowds, and they pick players who are going to do well. They're a well-run club. Gregory is an experienced, canny, savvy captain. The bowling changes he makes sense. He's so good at coming in, and you said 18 off 5. That's a classic Gregory performance, isn't it? And you look, Smead was second top scorer in the tournament. Kola Cadmore was third top. He was the guy who basically butchered Lancashire in the semi, got them through. Dixon did it in the quarter-final. There's always someone coming in. It's a bit like England's white ball team in the good times. There's always someone will come in and blast sixes from the off. And they're bowling as well. Meredith leading wicket taker. Green. When you watch Ben Green bowl, you sort of marvel at the variety. He bowls sort of slow Yorkers, doesn't he? At times, wide York. He's got great control. They seem to have every box ticked, and great that it's a non-test team.
Yeah, I think the illustration of their strength is that they are comfortable letting Sean Dixon go. Some people might look at what he's done in T20 cricket over the last few years. Totally transformed, by the way. He used to be a sort of stodgy opener who barely played T20 cricket. He's turned into one of the best middle order players in the country. They are letting him go for good reason, because they have so many good youngsters who can't get into their T20 side. James Rue, who played on finals days, barely played T20 cricket. Tom Rue is really highly rated. Tom Lambie's played in the 100, but he doesn't always get in the T20 side at Somerset. So they're doing amazingly well at the moment. And yeah, big moment for Smead, who's had a relatively quiet couple of years. And then it was a good day for Toby Albert too, another fine young player. He hit 85 off 58 up top. Lawrence, you called what would happen with Northants. So he's wearing Northants maroon today, actually. Northants got Chris Lind, didn't they?
They got Chris Lind. A bit painful, given that he used to be a steelback himself. Darren Lehman apparently asked him whether he'd play for Northants. He goes, "No, mate, I'm playing for Hampshire," and they didn't speak for 2 weeks. And you could see why Lehman wanted him.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who watched him at Northants and Wantage Road in those T20 years will know exactly why they wanted him. Why didn't Northants bowl George Scrimshaw at him earlier? I don't know. Scrimshaw bowled a good over against Surrey in the quarters, took 2 wickets, changed that game. I thought a bit of pace might have been interesting. Instead, Lloyd Pope comes on and, is a kind of missed slog sweep for 6 away from going for 6 sixes and over. In fact, the over which, I know that went for 30, but the moment that really turned it was when Ben Sanderson bowled a shoulder high full toss to Lynn, which he whacked for 6 and then hit the free hit for 6, and that took it from something like 55 off 34 to 40 odd off 30, and that from that moment on the game was dead. So when a guy gets on a run like that, unstoppable.
Pretty good going. 108 off 51 or wherever it was, and the second top score's 12.
Yeah, all right.
That's pretty good. First semi-final was a good one. Somerset versus Lancs. Bit of controversy in Liam Livingston's dismissal. Given LBW, looked more than likely that there was a bit of that involved. And then Lancashire created a talking point of their own, retiring out George Balderson when they needed 30 odd from the last 11. In his place comes Tom Hartley, and obviously he's out first ball. Katya, Keaton Jennings labelled the schedule ludicrous before the semi-final. Lancashire ended up giving a debut to someone in the semi-final, Arav Shetty. What did you make of the setup of the Blast and the spectacle of what is supposed to be one of the most important days of the summer, having so many star players absent? The fact that the Blast final takes place in between 2 England white ball games means so many England players are unavailable, and it's so hard to lock in overseas players too.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the annual quote around between the quarterfinals and finals day of England players being taken out. It was Tamar Mills, Sussex last year when they won their quarterfinal, and then they weren't going to have Jofra Archer for finals day, and he had a very similar quote, Sam Billings as well. It's the annual debate that's going to end next year when the Blast is played in one block. But I did feel it was a bit weird. Quarterfinals, I barely registered that they were happening pretty much. There was so much other cricket going on, and it felt like there was no kind of fanfare going on around them. Obviously, I had that century from Ravi Bopara at the Oval that kind of breached the social media sphere, as it was. But yeah, it just feels so weird having the Blast done and then not done and then finals day. It doesn't make sense. I'm very glad that it's changing.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to have it streamlined. You just cannot have a competition where the knockout stages are over a month after the end of the group stage. Everyone forgets what's happening. It's too confusing. It doesn't work. And nowhere else does it in the world. That's another point that's made a lot, that nowhere else does that. It's very weird. It's a very good thing that's being changed for next year.
I saw it's interesting, actually. There's quite a bit of chat from the quarterfinals onwards about what a great tournament the Blast is. You know, people are supporting counties that they've followed for decades, and these clubs have been going, and some are celebrating the 150th anniversary this year. The 100 isn't like that, you know, it's manufactured and so on. I think the issue the Blast has always had is that before the quarterfinals, you've got this sort of gloop of group stage games which make it quite hard to follow. If you've got 6 or 7 games on one night, you know, Ross Whiteley can hit 6 sixes and over and no one notices, as happened a few years ago. Chris Gale can score hundreds for Somerset and it goes below the radar. The 100's big advantage is sort of scarcity, if you like, one game a day, or one double header a day, sometimes 2. So that is the focus of the English cricket community on that night. And if you perform well, you will get noticed. Now, that is the big problem with the Blast. I'm a big county fan. I like the Blast, but I have to defend the 100 on that score. That they have worked out how to get attention and how to be the big show on that night. The Blast doesn't do that until the quarterfinals, and however good finals day is. That's an ongoing problem that won't even be solved by the condensing of it.
The only thing I would say about having some Blast cricket after the 100 block is you do get, I think, some people who've been inspired into cricket or got into it in the 100 that then come to watch the quarterfinals. But it is a bit weird watching kids in Oval Invincibles shirts chanting "Oh Ravi Bopara," who clearly have no frame of reference of who Ravi Bopara is. So I do think that is a good thing that might be lost slightly, but the benefits of having the knockouts played in one block with the tournament are far greater than that.
So it's possible that those Oval Invincibles fans are aware of Bopara for his London Spirit work
Potentially.
over the years. I guess the other thing, and I completely agree with you with the group stage, if that was someone's full-time job to just follow the Blast, they'd struggle. It's really, really difficult. Games are on inconsistent days in the week. The schedule's mad. It's hard to follow who's available. You look at Hampshire, I think they had 5 or 6 overseas players in the competition. That shouldn't be how it operates. All that's fair. We talked about the new Blast schedule and format next year. I personally think it's a missed opportunity to properly reimagine it, but that's a separate conversation. Even with all that, finals day, it didn't feel like the game rallied around it as much as it ought to have done. If you looked at the host broadcaster, Sky Sports, for example, 100 final, 18 posts online. There wasn't a single highlights package put up during the game by the host broadcaster. It feels like, I don't know, there's just a collective shrug around it. And it's a shame because the cricket's really good.
Yeah, I mean, cock up or conspiracy? That's the question. A lot of county fans will tell you it's a conspiracy, that the broadcasters are deliberately sort of dumbing down or thinning out coverage of the tournament that they've loved for years. The 100 has. I went to the Utilita Bowl recently to watch Southern Brave against Oval Invincibles, and I was, just because I thought I've always slagged it off, I need to give it a chance, and I was impressed by. There were 10,000 in for the women's game. There were so many replica shirts. I know Southern Brave have done particularly well on the replica shirts front. Kids cared. I mean, there were grown-ups in replica shirts as well, which kind of opened my eyes a bit. So, wow, he's a 60-year-old bloke wearing a Southern Brave shirt, like he supported them all his life. So they've actually done something quite well here. But of course, if you keep plugging one thing and ignoring the other, you might say that is a natural consequence. I don't see why the two can't coexist. I came away from that game at the 100 thinking they can coexist. And though the social media coverage of the Blast was poor, the ground was still packed out. So people still care.
Yeah, 100%. On to the county championship. So it's all to play for in Division 1 going into the penultimate round of games. Surrey are 1 point clear of Nottinghamshire. Nottinghamshire are at the Keir Oval this week, so that's all set up to be a hugely important fixture. The Division 1 relegation race is brilliant as well. Basically, half the division are still in it, especially since Hampshire were docked 8 points for a pitch that wasn't regarded as meeting the adequate standards. Weirdly, though, that happened in June, and we only found out about the punishment on September the 11th. Even in the press release, it said that the decision was made on September the 2nd. So there's a 9-day gap between decision being made and anyone being told about it. Leicestershire are promoted for the first time ever, their first Division 1 season since 2003, and Glamorgan are going really well as well. They are 27 points clear of third place Derbyshire, who they play this week. If their lead is above 24 points, they will go up this week. Lawrence, on Leicestershire, amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, what Alfonso Thomas was talking about, they've laughed at us, who's laughing now kind of thing. I did earlier in the season. I ranked the 18 first class HQs. It was a very personal thing in order of where I'd like to go most, and Leicestershire were last, and I got absolute pelters from the people who make the cakes at Grace Road. Yeah, it was friendly pelters, but and then there were a couple of others sort of saying, typical lazy national media, never come to Grace Road. I've been there a few times. So no, delighted for them. And actually, what's interesting about Division 2 is, the clubs you mentioned there, Leicestershire, Glamorgan, Derbyshire, they're the teams usually prop it up. Those two plus Gloucestershire and Northants have kind of made the bottom 5 of Division 2 their own. Now, this season, Lancashire, Kent and Middlesex are all in the lower reaches of Division 2. So that has been a bit of a shot in the arm. How long Leicestershire and possibly Glamorgan or Derbyshire last in Division 1 remains to be seen. Northants have gone up 2 or 3 times and always generally come straight back down. So whether it'll tell us anything more, Leicestershire might then invest in 4-day cricket, and that might change things around. Who knows? But yeah, it's a great story.
I don't think any team has ever had a better recruitment drive as Leicestershire. This week they confirmed that Kashav Maharaj will be there for the first month next season, and that's on top of 4 permanent signings already. Point we've made a few times this season is that Leicestershire, probably alongside only Surrey and Notts, were the only 3 teams that could confidently say they'll be in Division 1 next season, even now with 2 weeks left in the season. So yeah, lots to play for this week. We've a reminder that on the Patreon channel, we have a weekly show just on county cricket where we get properly into all the stories from the last week. We've got an additional weekly show each week as well. Last week, Joe Harmon McGowan interviewed Tammy Beaumont. Amazing interview where Tammy got into some areas that she probably hasn't done in the media before, particularly the stuff around online trolling and just how prevalent that is, was really interesting. And also just how much, not just the professional career of women's players changed over her England career, but also attitudes from within the English game and within the ECB itself and how that's changed over the years. So would highly recommend that. Just £5 a month plus VAT, and England dailies after every day of English international cricket, men's and women's. So 3 more of those to come this week, and then lots to come in October, not just England's tour of New Zealand, but the Women's World Cup too. One player who's had an amazing season is Asa Tribe. Asa Tribe, the Jersey international who plays for Glamorgan. He went on an incredible run of form recently where a score of 175 brought down his average of scores in that little run. He has been a key part of Glamorgan's success in the championship. He had a brilliant Blast campaign, and this week got picked up in the SA20 with the Pyle Royals. I caught up with him last week to hear about his story so far. Something a little bit different for the next bit of the show. We've got Glamorgan and Jersey batter Asa Tribe with us. Asa, great to have you on. I'm going to start with your numbers over the last few weeks. I'm just going to read out your last 6 scores. 122 not out, 131 not out, 175, 53 not out, 206 and 24. What happened in the 24?
Well, I got a strangled down leg side, which I was triggered with, and I didn't hit. So, yeah, it was a bit of shame about that one, but I suppose at some point I had to get a lowie, I guess.
It's in a ridiculous run of form. What do you put it down to?
I think maybe just having a clear game plan, a clear technique that I want to stick by, and just having a good approach to how I want to assess conditions, bowlers, and just completely backing my own performance. And I think when you get in a run of form, it's easy to think, oh, well, I'm due a low score. But actually, the best chance to get another 100 is when you're in that good form. So, yeah, just tried ticking it over, to be honest, and back the fact that I was going to get 100 each game. And to be honest, I do this quite a lot where I think the day before a game or the day of a game that I'm going to get 100. So I almost visualize that good performance, and it seemed to have worked this time around.
Talk us through what visualizing scoring 100 actually means in your head.
I think it's just positive reinforcement about the fact that, right, I'm going to get 100 today. And so that kind of thing, kind of telling myself that, I would say. And then I think just before I start, I generally sort of have a look at the wicket, and not necessarily to see what it's going to do, but more the fact that I like to just visualize where the bowler's going to come from and play a few different strokes, like maybe a couple of cover drives or a cut and a pull and a clip. And yeah, just practice visualizing, seeing that kind of before it happens. Yeah.
Growing up, were there any particular batting idols that you had?
I mean, I've always liked Kohli, to be honest. I do like watching him bat, but Chris Gale as well. I'm not saying I'm anything like either of those, but yeah, I quite like those two.
So for listeners who aren't completely on top of this topic, what's the cricketing scene like in Jersey?
It's limited, and the amount of people that we have there that play is, again, not very many. And we have in the top division only 4 sides, so it can become a little bit repetitive because you end up playing them. You play the same teams 4 times a year, and you play T20s and 40 over cricket against them. And then we have a Channel Islands League, which is the other biggest Channel Islands, called Guernsey. So that's called the CI League. And you will play some home and away games against their boys as well. But that's only come in, that was obviously stopped post-COVID. So during that COVID period, and then they've sort of started up back again. But yeah, on Ireland, there's 4 teams in the top division, and then 5 in the second, 6 in the third. So it's not the most exciting, but it's kind of what we can do with the number of people that want to play over there.
That must be incredibly repetitive. Like if there's a guy on the opposition who's got the wool over you, you just keep facing him every 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you do, and I mean, it's hard to say that there is that happens, because I don't think the standard is good enough to be that way. But yeah, that would certainly be the case for potentially some lads that are new to the league, I would say.
So as a kid, did you have serious aspirations of being a professional cricketer? If the scene is so small in Jersey, there wouldn't necessarily be an obvious pathway for you to take to reach the professional game.
No, not necessarily to reach the professional game, but I certainly had international aspirations, because Jersey certainly competes above where it should do, given the amount of players we do have. So I had international aspirations for playing for Jersey first team, and that was certainly where it came from, watching the senior team play on Ireland against touring countries and stuff like that, and seeing them win. That gave me a lot of confidence that I wanted to be on the park, and I could see how you could move through the age groups and get into the senior team. And that's kind of one thing that I've been blessed with, because we have, now I'm in the senior team, you have about 2 tournaments per year, T20, 50 over, and you get to travel the world playing the sport you love. So it's very good being born in Jersey to have those. So at that stage, when I was watching on from the sideline, probably wasn't thinking professional cricket. I always want to be someone who's improving and getting a lot better. So yeah, for sure, I was thinking about how I can take my game to the next level. But it was only sort of towards sort of 14, 15, 16 that I really started thinking about playing professional cricket.
Also, it's just worth reiterating for listeners who are unaware of how Jersey get on. Jersey really weren't that far away from qualifying for the T20 World Cup that's happening next year. And I don't think you were playing this game, but Jersey beat Scotland at the qualifier early this summer. So it's a very competitive side. We've seen Scotland in major tournaments push some of the best teams in the world. So that level, the qualifier level, is actually much more competitive than people might think.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if we'd have had one result go our way there, and that was the last game. Obviously, we didn't get a chance to play Italy because that was completely rained off. But we took Netherlands pretty close, and we thumped Guernsey. So and beat Scotland, which I would say is probably one of the biggest results we've had as a Jersey side. So yeah, and then in the afternoon, Netherlands were playing Italy, and if Italy had either won that game or Netherlands had beaten them quicker, we'd be in a World Cup now. So yeah, look, it's a bit of a shame, but I think that's making our side hungry, and we're a young side, so there's only bright things ahead of our side, I think.
So how do you end up at Glamorgan then?
So I came to uni at Cardiff Met, and then and part of the reason I came was for my uni degree, but also to pursue my cricket, because at that point I really did want to play professional cricket, and I could clearly see the path to professional cricket. So obviously Cardiff Met cricket team, then you have the UCC set up, formerly MCCU, and then from there was good opportunities to play against counties, playing the Bucks set up, and then hopefully from there get a chance. And that's kind of the way it went for me. So got in the UCC the first year, and then wasn't able to play the county games at the start of the year because I was in Namibia with Jersey playing ODI fixtures, and then came back, did well in the Bucks stuff, and got an opportunity towards the back end of the year with Glamorgan. So that's kind of how I got there. But I could certainly see the journey for that prior to coming to university.
How does it work with balancing your Glamorgan commitments with Jersey? It's been a problem for quite a long time now for players who play for associate nations, balancing commitments for the national team alongside county commitments, just because it's a much more difficult proposition for associate players just in terms of pay and stuff around that. It's not as straightforward as someone who plays for New Zealand, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well the fact that because we're obviously an associate nation and we're playing a lot of qualifier tournaments, not actual World Cups at the moment, the Glamorgan stuff is a priority. So I make sure I don't miss any of that cricket, but I'm always looking to try and find ways of how I can come in for a couple of games here if I can't make the full tournament, stuff like that, because I love playing for Jersey. So yeah, look, obviously I'd like to be able to play more, but I'm not going to change the position I am in just because of that.
So Glamorgan have had a brilliant year in the championship as we speak. Second in the table, play Derbyshire next week, and if results go Glamorgan's way, Glamorgan will seal promotion to the top division for the first time in 20 years with a round to spare. What is it about Glamorgan this year that has led to Glamorgan being a much more competitive side? As I said earlier, it's been a long time since Glamorgan have been in that top division.
I think it's hard to pinpoint one thing maybe, but I think obviously we've had a new coach come in this year, been Richard Dawson, and I think he's kind of given everyone in the changing room a lot of trust, a lot of sort of chance to flourish, and a bit of like, yeah, go and show your skills, that kind of thing, and making sure we're playing tough cricket, we're hard to beat. Look, at the start of the year, I don't think we started particularly well. Our first three games weren't great, but we had a bit of a break in between. We had a sort of a game off, and then we were into round four, and that's kind of where we sort of spun it around, and there was a clear turning point for our championship side that year, because that's kind of where results started going our way, and I think we won 3 or 4 on the bounce straight away there. I think it was just about starting games a bit bit quicker, being straight on it. I think that was something we struggled with last year, where we were behind the 8 ball in the first session or two. I think that was a clear focus post those first 3 games where we were maybe a bit slow to start.
You got quite a cool blend of experience and youth in the squad. You got the older guys like Ingram, Cook, Northeast, and then you got the skipper Carlson in the middle. But alongside you, players like Ben Callaway have been coming through and having a lot of success. It must be quite an exciting dressing room to be a part of at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. The experience of those guys, the senior guys, certainly gives me confidence to bat around, and also, being around younger guys as well who are performing well is good for Glamorgan as well. So I think the dressing room at the moment's like quite a cool environment to be in.
I know he was only there for a couple of weeks, but what was it like sharing a dressing room with Marnus Labuschagne? The guy's averaging nearly 50 in Test cricket. He must be some guy to have in the dressing room.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed my time when Marnus was here. He's not short of putting his 50p in, let's put it that way. But I thought he was a really good value, both on and off the field. And I really enjoyed him.
And then this week there was news that you're going to be in South Africa over the winter at the SA20. Was that news that you expected to come your way?
No, to be honest, I thought it was a bit of a long shot. I thought, well, there's no harm in putting my name in the draft, but the way it kind of came through, I was certainly a bit shocked, because we obviously knew when the draft was, so we were all talking about it on the day, and then it sort of came to tea time and the draft was still going. So then we went back on the field after tea, and then this was day 3 of the county champ game, and then I think maybe 5 overs to go of the day, and Billy Root came on to give some drinks out or something like that, and he shook my hand and said, "Oh, Pile Royals, well done." And I was like, I thought he was muling me, I thought he was messing me around, and I obviously didn't believe it straight away. But then when we walked off the field for the end of play, Ben Callaway showed me his phone, and I didn't get a chance to read it quickly, but he seemed pretty happy, and he was saying, "Look, that's class, well done." So I quickly had a look at my phone, and everyone else was sort of congratulating me before I could even see it myself. But certainly a bit of a shock.
Obviously, it's happened very quickly, and players your age don't get picked in leagues like the SA20 that often. It's one of the very best T20 leagues in the world. A lot of people think it's the best league in the world after the IPL, but you've not got that out of pure luck. You had an amazing season in the Blast, and especially I think what's striking is a lot of young players who do well tend to do their work at the top of the order, but you struck at 150, averaged more than 30, batting at number 6. How do you prepare for that role? Because that is a role, when you look at the guys who nail it, traditionally it's older guys. So what did you do that worked out this year?
I think, look, I didn't expect to start in the squad, let alone the 11. But I think I got quite lucky, because basically we had 2 overseas players playing in the 2s, and then they found out the day before that they couldn't have 2 overseas in the 2s, so one of them had to go and play the following day. So I got brought in, and I was looking at our top order, and I was batting 6. And I was like, well, our top order's gone, and the opposition we weren't playing didn't think was going to get our top order out. So I was like, well, I'm probably not going to face many balls here. But anyway, we lost a few early ones and ended up getting 60 or 40. And that's kind of where that role came from, because I was batting 6 that day. So I would say, how do I prepare for it? I think I've got to strike basically from ball 1 or 2. So I've got to really understand pitch conditions quickly. And look, is that a position I want to stay in forever? Probably not. I think everyone likes to open the batting in T20 cricket, face as many balls as possible. But the role that I was given for Glamorgan this year, to bat at 6 and kind of take games home or get us up to a big score, I felt was one that I could start my T20 career off, and we had kind of a bit of a set top order. So I understood it, and I realised that was kind of my way into the side, and just had to perform going from there. But preparing for it, I would say just there's a bit of range hitting, I guess, but basically coming into nets and striking the ball out the middle of the bat straight away. And that probably sounds a bit easier than what it is, but not necessarily hitting sixes, just hitting the ball pure, whether that's down or up. And yeah, basically, or just getting off strike first ball because you've got the other lad on a big score. But yeah, it's not an easy position, and I felt like I did a job for Glamorgan this year, but unfortunately we just missed out on quarterfinals. But yeah.
Yeah. On the Blast more generally, it's a tournament that is going to change a little bit next year. As a player, how did you find it in your first full season in terms of the atmospheric grounds and things like that?
Well, it's certainly a new experience because I hadn't really played in front of that many guys before, and I think what kind of helped was the first game I played was a Merchant Taylor's school against Middlesex. So not the biggest crowd by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly there was a good couple hundred people there, maybe even 500. So it was a nice introduction. Got my first catch, and that's kind of settled the nerves, I guess. And then to get a not out at the back end was a good thing. So that certainly eased me in. But then we had Surrey at home, and they're bowling a lot sharper than necessarily I was used to facing, whether that was in the county champ or prior cricket. So that kind of opened my eyes up to be like, got to be on here, because Chris Jordan bowled me pretty convincingly. And then I think that made me a bit more alert. It just gave me that experience playing under lights as well. I kind of took that forward for the rest of the competition.
What is the Blast viewed like within the dressing room? Because obviously there's a lot of people have a lot of opinions in terms of what the English summer should look like with 100 and everything around that. But for the professional players actually inside the dressing room, how important is the competition?
Oh, so it's a massive part, right? Because look, we haven't won the comp yet, so we certainly are trying to win it for sure. So yeah, so it's a massive part, but it is obviously a balancing act between how much time we have to play T20 cricket and county champ cricket, because obviously we're still in Division 2, so we still need to prioritise that as well to get up to Division 1, and we don't have a massive squad, so we have some restriction on squad depth, right? So you find ourselves picking a lot of the same guys for all the formats, and that's not my decision, obviously, but that's generally the way it's been happening recently. But I think the Blast is certainly one of our biggest priorities for sure.
Mm. Were you a Blast fan as a kid? Were you watching I don't know, Leicestershire versus Northants on Sky with Butch and Dagnall in the Sky pod, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I always like watching the T20 Blast, to be honest, and I'd rather watch it than the 100, to be honest.
Good man. Asa, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Best of luck with the rest of the season, but also anything you get up to in the winter as well. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Finally, Lawrence, you wrote a piece recently about climate change and cricket bats and how climate change is affecting the production of cricket bats. A, how? And B, how serious is this?
I mean, climate change is one factor in what MCC are calling a bat emergency. So essentially not enough willow trees were planted 20 years ago, sort of as the T20 rush was getting going. Willow trees, of course, English willow in particular, is what bats are made from. Climate change gets a bit chewy, but essentially with milder winters, willow grows more quickly than it used to. But the willow, the wood that is turned into clefts becomes less, it's less ready to be a bat. And of course, pros now don't want to sit around banging their bat like we all used to as kids. They want a ready-made bat. Now that isn't happening as much. So climate change is only a small factor. The fact is that there isn't enough willow at the moment, and so bat prices bat prices are going up, and of course that makes it harder for people with less money to get into it. We want cricket to be more inclusive and so on. And MCC are trying to do something about it. They're looking into other options. So laminated bats, can you take other bits of wood, stick them together? Do you just have to have a hole cleft? There's talk of fiberglass bats. That's still in the offing. The problem may be solved in a few years' time when the willow growing community has caught up with things. JS Wrights, who say they produce about 75% of all bats from their sort of stable's the wrong word, isn't it? But of the where they grow their trees, have plant now 3 or 4 trees for everyone they sort of turn into a bat. So they're sort of getting back ahead of the curve. In the meantime, the concern is that people can't afford bats because supply hasn't kept up with demand. So it's an interesting, it's an unexpected drama. I mean, Kashmir, they have a lot of willow there. The English willow community says that the quality isn't as good, even though they produce about 2 million clefts a year. Serbia has a willow market.
Amazing.
About 100,000 clefts a year. In England, they talk about 700,000. Apparently, there's a small place in Australia, in Victoria, that's starting to grow willow. English willow's never gone well in Australia. The wood they grow there is more brittle. It gets very chewy, but the bottom line is that there isn't enough willow at the moment to sustain cricket's needs. And more bats are getting used. More bats are getting damaged because more people are playing T20. They're whacking the ball more. Pros are getting X number of free bats a year. And of course, they have to. The companies have to make up their money elsewhere. They pass it down to the consumer. It's an unexpected crisis, and the game is aware of it.
Sounds like there's a job for Trade Envoy Botham to get his teeth into.
Perfect. It's right up his street, isn't it?
Well, Serbian willow, that's got to take off. But yeah, it feels like, obviously, in the grand scheme of things and the climate change affects, the production of cricket bats is pretty low on the list of things that are important. But I do think that in cricket more generally, we don't talk about climate change enough. We did a couple of weeks ago when Adam Zampa came over from Australia to play 1 game in the 100. But cricket, more than any other sport, is going to be impacted by a changing climate, given where cricket is played prominently. We've already had extreme heat in Australia. Bangladesh is particularly susceptible to floods. We've had air pollution problems that stopped cricket happening in India. We've had droughts in South Africa. All this stuff is really serious, and it feels like we're just skirting around the edges of a serious conversation. Even at a micro level as well, I've got a piece coming out hopefully this week about the life of a a grassroots recreational grounds person looking after pitches. The hosepipe ban in Southern Waterport in Hampshire greatly affected cricket pitches in Hampshire, and some pitches weren't playable and groundsmen could only water like the square, so the outfields then became quite dangerous in places and you couldn't have cricket played on them. And that's from one summer of dry weather. We didn't have extreme heat this summer, it was just dry from June to July, and that made the hosepipe ban. And then you've also combined that with equipment not being up to date to cope with the requirements of climate change and hotter summers and wetter winters. There's a lot more days of recreational cricket now being lost to climate change in England. So it's not just about drought in South Africa and places you would think there'd be drought. It's lesser extremes, but still significant changes here. Yeah, absolutely. That is everything for today's show. Thanks, Katya. Thanks for joining us, Lawrence. And thank you, listeners. Special thanks to COFRESH, the UK's #1 Indian snack brand, for sponsoring today's show. Whether you're a bold snack explorer or fueling the family through the cricket, COFRESH is your go-to for crunch, spice, and good times.